Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to be back for another appearance for Plaza. We're going to begin by looking at each class of the materials that are in your kits. I'm very objective and kind of scientific about talking about techniques. And then when we're done with that, we're going to have a lot of fun and kind of use our intuitive, creative side of our brains or whatever. Okay, so all the materials that I'm using are the ones that I use in my studio, and I've chosen them because of their being very high quality. And I think that when you're using quality materials, including the paper is the foundation for the work that you're putting into things. So you don't want to, much the same as you don't want to build a fabulous house on a poor foundation. So the paper is your foundation. The Somerset book cover paper is what we'll be using it. It's an all cotton paper, and it works very well with the Faber-Castell, both the wet and the dry media. So we'll get started. We get the overhead, and we'll start with the Pitt pens. So they are the black pens in your kits, and there's one of them's marked FM. It is a nice kind of combination brush and regular pen. There's a S, which is a small tip, and then the XS is not excessive, rather it is extra small. So these are very similar. One of the reasons I like these pens so much, they're an India ink formulation. And so when they dry, they're permanent. And what's nice about them being pigmented the way that they won't bleed through your paper. So if you're working with them in a sketchbook or on a good piece of paper, if there's any reason you want to use the other side, you still can, because unlike solvent-based markers, they're not going to bleed through the paper. So you can use them and fill your whole sketchbook up on both sides of it. Now, these are the specific fixed pens. They also have a series of brush pens, which are also in your kit, and we'll get to them soon. But the reason I like these is that I do a lot of characters. I do a lot of drawings of animals and kind of more of a cartoonish type way of doing things. And so I generally use pen points, old-fashioned nibs, and India ink. And when I'm on the road, especially, or if I'm working in my sketchbook, these are so close to being the same thing that I often use these instead of the old way that I have been doing things. So look, let's try the FM pen first. And so what's so nice about this uh, pen is that when I make lines, when I am drawing something, I can take advantage of the energy in which I'm drawing. So it goes from thick to thin. It will fade out a little bit if I'm not using too much pressure on it. And so that with drawing some of my characters, that I just feel like, it just flows. I don't have to stop. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen. So what I would say as I'm kind of talking about this, try some stuff for yourself. I mean, you don't have to be I've been doing these characters for like, 40 years, so it's second nature to me. And that's why, I feel like I've really bonded with this pen. But, you could draw circles, you could draw geometric shapes, you could, draw anything that you want. I'm allowing you to kind of figure out for yourselves what subject matter you want to work with. But I do, kind of characters similar to that. So that right here, I get a nice thick line and goes to a thin line. I like a thick line and then to a thin line. And that gives it a real dynamic quality and gives it a lot more energy than if I tried to make sure that all the lines were exactly the same. So you can build up textures as well. And we'll do this with each of the pens, but you could get a certain feeling for cross hatching with these. So try that, see what happens. Try your hand at doing some cross hatching, right? But the real value of this is the ability to go from thick to thin. And a lot of that will be, use a lot of pressure. You could even kind of use it on its side for a really thick line. And then as you kind of twist it and come down, it will come down to a thinner line. So that, again, is a way for you to get a lot of a very dynamic and flowing quality to the lines that you draw. Now, the next one we'll look at is the S tip, and it is what they call a fixed point. So it has, a specific size nib to it. And so consistently, as I am drawing the lines, they all look pretty much the same. And even if I go kind of fast, it's pretty much the same line all over. So it's a consistency. I use this pen for cross hatching or to help kind of develop a feeling for the roundness or kind of giving it a little more volume. And so as you cross hatch, you can have one set of lines. Now, if you think about it, this pig that I just did has like kind of rounded appendages like, arm and things like that. And so let me just, so it shows up, we'll use the bigger pen here. Oh, and I might mention, you have two pieces of paper. You have one piece of paper that'll be for our book project, and the other one is just for horsing around to find out what's going on here. Okay, so if I have, let's say, a flannel shirt, and I lay it down flat, let's say I just ironed it and it's flat, then any pattern that I have like on the sleeve is going to show up as a plaid, and it's going to have perpendicular lines, some of them going the length of the sleeve and some going the width. But if I put my arm in there, then all of a sudden that becomes like a tube. It isn't flat anymore. So, your hand comes out here, and obviously your arm, part of your arm goes in there. So these lines, as I draw them, are going to be similar to that, but they're going to get a little bit closer together, or they're going to appear to be a little bit closer as it goes down to the bottom. The ones that are really different are that instead of drawing these straight across perpendicular, I'm going to follow the curve. And so it's the same cloth pattern of this shirt, but once you have an arm in it, it becomes more dimensional. And so in order to use a pen in cross hatching, in order to kind of capture that quality, you want to make sure that you follow the shape. So instead of having a rounded arm that then suddenly is flattened, this is a very flat pattern. Any kind of a grid that has straight lines that are perpendicular flattens things. You get an opportunity to give volume to something by following the shape with your line. Now, with the S pen, then if I wanted to alter that even more so, I could do some cross hatching down here to make it a little darker with the idea that the light is coming from up above. It's the top of the shirt, it's going to be brighter. And as it curves away, then that's where you start getting shadows. So in order to get a shadow effect, then what I'm doing now is adding some extra parallel lines, but I'm also going with the shape with these as well. So it builds up what I've already started to do with the bigger lines in order to get some tone in there. So essentially what your eye is doing is looking at it, and it kind of blends it together. So it isn't like the bright white of the paper, because more of the white paper is getting covered up. And then obviously, if you go through with another set of lines, it's going to get darker yet. And I could keep on going so that, maybe I'll make them a little shorter this time, and now I'm only putting the cross hatched lines near the bottom. And I can get it to a point where I just have a couple little white bits of the paper coming through, and then as it comes around the arm to where the light is, then that produces the lighter volume. So it's a way that you could use the black India ink in order to get tones. So you could think of it in terms of, let's say I've got 3 or 4 squares here. This one's going to look a little bit, have a little more tone to it than just the bright paper. And then if I put those lines a little bit closer together, that's going to create a mechanical gray. So it's not like a gray that you get with charcoal and you rub it, or graphite or something like that. They're using the same value of ink, but the way that you're using the lines and the cross hatching. And then if I get it like that, again, the same thickness of point, the same black ink, but more densely applied. And then, finally, if you hardly have any lines at all between them, it's going to look almost black. Or you could, kind of work it up so that it is black. So you've got a lot of tonal ranges with this, as well as being able to draw lines. So it isn't just about doing outlines, things like that. You can also use this for shades and for textures and things like that. And then what I find really nice is to have the extra small point, the XS, because then, if I'm doing a sketch here and I just want a light tone, then when I put these bits in, then they're going to look very pale, and they still will give some nice tone, but it's a lighter tone because they're smaller. And then, of course, the other thing too is, like, if you're trying to draw something, let's say that I want to do tiny little bits on here. I don't know, maybe some kind of rash, pig rash. You have these little bits here. And so there's a nice contrast between the strength and the energy of the FM brush point up against, like I've got this bit of cross hatching that I could put in here with the S point. And then I can feather that out and make it just a little bit more subtle with a thinner XS. So you've got a whole variety of things, line qualities in terms of the thickness, the XS, the smallest. The S point is going to appear darker just because the line's thicker. It's almost twice as long, or as wide. And then the FM point, that obviously is a lot thicker, but it also can be thin depending on how much pressure. So the pressure that you apply to this pen is a little more dynamic, or has a greater range of effects than if you use it on the points. Okay, so those are the black, and I use those, again, primarily to kind of develop the character, put a little shading in with cross hatching, and then use the other materials for the color. Okay, let's go to the Polychromos pencils, and they're the round ones. So you also have watercolor pencils. So if I kind of push those, they roll, and the watercolor pencils do not. So these are more apt to stay put. These move around a little bit more, but we'll start with the Polychromos. Now, the one thing about all of Faber-Castell's pencils, they are just absolutely premium. They're nicely finished. They're finished at the end. They have the color and the number branded on them. But what's really important is on what's on the inside. Oh, they also have very high quality cedar wood from California. It's all, top graded stuff to make sure that you get high quality for your art materials. But the color itself, it is an oil-based color. It isn't a wax-based color. So there are a lot of color pencils out there that are wax-based. They give you vibrant colors, but they have a limit as to how much you can put down at one point. With these, with the oil-based color, you can keep on layering and layering and layering, and you just don't run out of the opportunities to be able to layer. So I'm going to sharpen my pencil. It's recommended that you use a handheld sharpener. If you use like a pencil sharpener that's made for office pencils, then you're going to get a point that is too sharp, or it is just too narrow. So if you think about a pencil lead, all right, with an office pencil, this is magnification, the height of your point compared to the width is much higher. With a handheld sharpener, you get more of like a point that you would get with a little golf pencil. So the height compared to the width is a little closer together. And the reason that's important is that an office pencil, the graphite in that is made so it's hard enough to be able to write letters and do numbers, and it's more kind of a clerical type of thing. With an art pencil, you want a soft lead so that you have a lot more control on the value of what you put down, the intensity of the color, the thickness, the thinness of the line. It's really much more important to have a soft lead inside of a art drawing pencil than for an office pencil. And because of that softness of the lead, if you get a point that's like this, the first thing that's going to happen when you go to draw, you're going to knock that point off just because it's not strong enough to hold as delicate and sharp a point as that. So I recommend using a handheld sharpener. The other thing that's nice about the Faber-Castell pencils, the kid pencils, is all the way up to the professional pencils. The way that they put these together, they glue the pencil over the lead, and they put glue along the whole edge. So this pencil, when they take the two halves, they put it together with the lead in the sandwich, then form the pencil from that. There is glue along the entire edge. Other pencils, you might get a glue spot, and a glue spot. And if you have a pencil like that, that's why that sometimes if you're sharpening your pencil, you keep on losing the lead. Because if I would accidentally drop the pencil and I'd have a break in the lead, if there's no glue spot up until that point, then there's nothing really holding the lead in there, and I go to sharpen it and the lead just falls out. So anyhow, those are some of the mechanics on the way that they make it. And again, as I say, this is an oil-based pencil. So I'm going to sharpen it, and then we'll talk a little bit about holding the pencil. Okay, you're not writing a letter. And so I very rarely use a pencil like this unless I really want to get very, very heavy application down. Most of the times I'll hold the pencil near the end. And so it's kind of like this is the base. And then this way I can just let the weight of the pencil, and if I want to put down a light, even tone, then I'll do it gradually. And, a lot of times, you can be very patient. Now, as I do that, and it probably is not going to show up too well on the camera, but I can see the grain of the paper. So what I'm doing is just putting pigment on the top surface of the paper, and I can see the valley of the paper staying the way it is. It's like this white color. And the more I go over on top of it, the more that texture comes out. And you can use that. That has a very nice look to it. Now, if I really want to get it to be a very solid color, then I can use a little more pressure, and I can force that pencil lead a little farther into those valleys. I'm actually mashing the paper down a little bit. Now, as far as erasing, it's a lot easier to take like a kneaded eraser. And one of the things that's nice about kneaded erasers that they're just a little bit sticky. So if I just want to alter the tone of the polychromos there, I can just kind of press it down and pick it up a little bit, and you can see that all of a sudden, yeah, I'm taking it off without it all coming off, so that you can use your pencil to kind of do some nice little textural things. So you can use the drawing, you can use the eraser as a drawing tool, because I'm kind of taking some of that off. If you want to get rid of completely, you can use a vinyl eraser, and then this will come right off. But if you get into an area where you would kind of damage the paper by really using a lot of pressure, which I'll do right here, it's harder to get that out, because now you have not only put the pigment on the top, but you've forced it down into the bottom. So those are just, things to keep in mind. But as far as layering the color, the color, now I'm going to kind of make it get a little lighter. I'm going to reinforce how dark that is, and I'm going to come out a little bit lighter this way. And then I'll take another pencil, I'll take the green, and I can go right on top of that, and it's going to stick. It's not going to be repelled by, a waxy buildup. And then as I come around this way, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. And so, in a sense, if you put a light portion down, it's almost like using transparent paint. Now here, I don't know if it's too subtle, but if you would be able to see here, I've got the purple and the green on top of it is pretty much full green. And it creates just a nice, you can really tell that that's on top of that. And then through here, the two colors are blended together a little bit, so you're not quite sure which is on the top and the bottom. And you can use those kind of techniques in order to produce feeling of space or some kind of hierarchy of what's in front and what's overlapping and so forth. So let's use another pencil on top of it. And what I want to do is really show you, let's start with the light color first and then build up. Okay, so this is that kind of melony color. Okay, so we'll put that one down first. I'm not going to go nuts with it. I'm going to keep it like a medium saturation. And, I encourage you to be doing the same thing on your paper using your pencils, because it will make more sense if you physically do it. Now I'm going to take the green. I'm going to go on top of that. I'm having no trouble laying green on top of that color. Again, it's not wax resisting wax. And so I'm getting kind of a nice overlay there. So I've got the green, I've got the kind of melon color, and then I've got the mix of the two on top of each other. Then I'll take the purple, go on top of that. Okay, if I want to, I can go back and put some green. And because you can overlap these colors, you can get some really nice shadow effects. You don't have to, follow the impressionist lead and don't think of using black for shadows. You can think of other colors that will be more convincing as a shadow. But because you can just build up color on top of color, so you got the purple on top of there again, and we can put the green on top of that. And I can put the pinkish color on top of that. And you just keep on building up and building up and building up. So that's one of the really nice physical aspects of these pencils. Because they are oil-based, it's pretty unlimited how many color overlays you can build up. And then you can, in fact, do, now let's go back to our little original pig character here. I can put a very light bit of pinkish color there. Then I could come back, and if I want to kind of show a little bit of shadowing or something, I could just put a very light purple on top of that. And so I can start getting a feeling for kind of a dimensional quality to this character by overlapping colors. So I don't have to just totally fill in. this really bright pink and just leave it at that. If I want to, I can make kind of some subtler changes in it. And then, you know, if he's eaten something he isn't supposed to, we'll give him a little green cast here. He's not feeling great. And you get to these really lovely color combinations that you normally wouldn't get. Now, you have the 3 pencils in our selection to kind of expand on the color range of all of them together. But the Albrecht Dürer and the Polychromos pencils come in 120 colors. And I will have to admit that I have several sets of 120, and I haven't used all the colors yet. I have a certain range of colors that I like the best. And a lot of the colors that I use are actually made up of overlapping other colors, but it is nice to have that big set because there's pretty much a color for everything in that. But you can also get by very nicely with a limited palette if you overlap your colors as you're working. Okay, now for the Albrecht Dürer pencils, what's interesting, we'll get into it a little bit later too, is that the pigments that are in the Albrecht Dürer pencils, the Albrecht Dürer pencils have the same bonding with the glue along the whole edge. They have like silver markings rather than gold. And as I mentioned out there, like the hexagonal rather than the round shape. There's also like a little icon that's like a little paintbrush to remind you that these are water soluble. All right, so the thing that I find just incredible about these is how rich they are, and they do what they're supposed to do. When I was young, I don't know why my dad had these, but he had a set of these watercolor pencils, and he thought I might have fun kind of playing with them. And I was so disappointed. He told me what they did, and they didn't do it. You know, it's like, oh, you can draw something and then put water on them, and they turn into watercolor. Well, they didn't do that at all. They just scratched through the paper because they were not very well pigmented and they were very hard. These things, this is the red one, and I'm going to just put a patch of it down here. And if you only could buy one set of pencils, you could buy these, the Albrecht Dürer ones, because you can use them like a regular color pencil and just leave them, but then you also have the option of turning them into watercolor. So what I'm going to do now is I put down a little field of color here, and as soon as I hit it with water, you can see how they just explode with pigment. And the more pigment you have down there and the less water that you put on them, the more intense they are. So, you know, if I want to do another kind of value run here showing the intensity, okay, I can use, again, same advice with a handheld pencil sharpener for these as well. Okay, so I got a good solid patch down there, and now I'm going to feather it out. I'm using a little less pressure, and then I'll kind of come to practically nothing at all. But then as soon as I put a brush on it, then I can get kind of a nice gradation as I go off the paper. Okay, so I could go from just a really solid, intense red here down to kind of a real delicate kind of a blush. Now, the other thing you can do with the pencils, and this is what I do when I travel. If I have a scrap piece of paper, I'll make a little palette for myself. And again, I am choosing from 120, but a little card that I can put in my wallet. I put all my favorite colors. And then if I get some water, or I could have a water pen or something like that, I got my sketchbook, I've drawn something, and I do coloring, I pull out these little things, and then you can use this as like a little water pan set. I can use my brush with a little water, pick that up, and come over here and use it the way that I would a pan set of watercolors. So you can use them as a pencil. You can create your own little watercolor set here, and makes doing watercolor on an airplane very easy. You don't have to worry about whole lot of extra stuff. All right. Now, if I want to, I can draw with them. Starting to run out of paper here. We're not even close to eating up. Okay, so this time I'm going to just do more of kind of like a duck or something. So that you can see that. All right, so I can draw the main thing. And then if I put a little value here, put a little value here, and anticipate where I want my really intense colors, that's when I sketch it out, then again, I can take a brush with some water and I can come in here and I can start moving it around then. So I can kind of place it where I need it. And if I need it darker at the bottom, I can put some more water on my brush and then come through and then feather it out. No pun intended. But it is a duck after all. And so you can get those kind of effects. Now you can also, let's draw something maybe a little bit bigger here. Let's do kind of a sphere. Yeah, and I can kind of use this pretty much like a regular water, like a colored paper pencil. I kind of add a little extra value, move it around here. And anticipating where the shadows might be, I can come in and just, while this is still dry, I can put that on top, maybe put like a little bit of a shadow here. Get a little reflection of the ball down at the bottom there. Let it kind of taper out a little bit. And take my brush, I'm in through here, and then just flatten the brush down a little bit and just move it around, and then it'll pick up the color. And this is a little bit darker because it has a little bit of the blue. And then here it's going to be kind of a purplish color because it's blending the blue and the red together. I can come back, maybe pick some of this up and put it in through there. So you get a really nice watercolor effect using pencils, or you could use it as a pencil, or, you know, let me draw a line here. You know, really make it dark in some areas and let it lighten out a little bit as it comes out. So you could decide how much of that line you want to keep and how much you might want to blur and let it kind of bleed out. So you can have some nice effects with that as well. Okay, so those are our pencils. Now we'll get to the Albrecht Durer markers. Want to make sure we have plenty of time to do our book project, so I'll go through this a little bit faster. These come in 60 colors. The pencils themselves come in 120, but the markers come in 60. And you have two. You've got a brush pen, which is great, again, for going from thin to thick. You know, can make some very bold marks with that. And it also has a bullet point to it. So if you want to make a smaller kind of consistent line, you can do that as well. You can use this for cross hatching, all sorts of things. Now, again, water soluble. Anything Albrecht Dürer in this line is going to be water soluble. So if I want to, I can go over that with my brush and some water. You know, you can play with this as much as you like, but that's pretty much the same as the pencils, but you get broader lines, but you certainly get lots and lots of pigment. Now, the one thing you don't want to do with the water pencils or the markers, don't put them directly into the water. If you do that, I mean, it definitely will give you an effect and it'll make this, you know, very fluid and very soft, but that water will wick between the wood and the colored pencil material and it'll rot it out. And so if you do that, you're going to ruin the pencil. So what's much better to do is to put maybe on a scrap piece of paper, whether it's this or it's one of these. You don't want to dump those, you don't want to dump your markers in the water as well. So if you want to get really nice kind of intense watercolor, do that on a scrap piece, or I get the kind of for the markers, I have these enamel pens or pans, and you can just go ahead and if you anticipate really wanting to do a large kind of watercolor thing, instead of maybe putting it down with a pen and then blending it out, in addition to that, you can also put it in like an enamel tray or a piece of plastic or something, and then you can pick it up and do whatever you want with it. But do not dip the pens into your water because it's going to wreak havoc on it. Now, these are transparent, and so if you let them dry, they won't mix as much. If they're wet, as you go over on top of them, they might, but you could kind of let me pick that up and turn it into watercolor. So you can see as I go over here, then it starts, kind of turning a nice purplish color, so you can balance them. So you have a blue and a red. You make a purple with it. The transparent colors work exceptionally well. You don't have to have the perfect and the blue and the perfect red to get a nice purple. If it were really opaque, then you might get some kind of weird, more like a putty color, something like that. And of course, with the yellow, you're going to get green. So the transparency of the watercolor works nicely in order to get secondary colors as you go over another color. They can blend together. You can manipulate them the way that you can any kind of watercolor. Now, the last material to go to are the Pitt pens themselves. And they also are a brush tip, but they are a little smaller, and you can get a much sharper line with them. So if I am hardly using any pressure at all, you can see that that is a very thin, very delicate line. By the same token, if I want to, I can get really nice broad marks and strokes that show, the energy that it takes for me to press down on that and then swirl around, involves this wrist. And so this is a line that's very characteristic of drawing actively. And then I also have the opportunity to draw very precisely if I cut back on the pressure that I'm using on the point. So you can have nice, and you can use these like a lot of times if I'm doing leaves or something, you can just use the characteristic stroke to create a feeling for, like maybe a tropical fern or something like that. So that's something else for you to experiment with, is just see what kind of marks you can make with all these materials. And you'd be surprised at how you can really add textures and colors that you normally wouldn't come up with unless you were kind of experimenting with these tools. So, I can make this little, it's a blue leaf, but, there it is. Okay, so we've got gone over pretty much what the capabilities are of all the materials. And now what I want to do is kind of get into a project where we're going to combine all the materials in a variety of multimedia applications. And the vehicle for that is going to be the chapbook. Now, the chapbooks have been around for centuries, even, kind of back to the 1500s and afterwards. And, once they got away from making books by hand copying them, and we had movable type and they could print books, books were not that rare as they were before. And then they still were expensive because they had, binding and stuff like that. But the chapbook became something that was very popular because it was easy to make. You could print on it, you could draw on it. They used it for folk tales, for religious and political tracts, and for all sorts of things. But the thing that's nice about it is just so simple to make. Now, I brought an example of a couple of them that I've done. And these are all made out of one sheet of paper. And so that extra piece of paper that you have, um, you will be able to make your own book. And so in this case, you can see it's got 8. It has a front, a back, and then it's got 6 more pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in between. All right, so get your regular piece of paper out, the one that we aren't experimenting with. And this is the simple way of doing this book. All right. Fold it, your paper lengthwise to begin with. And then try to be as accurate as,
Franz,
yes.
I just have a quick question. Since you're starting to work with the paper, Cecilia is asking, can I use either side of the paper, or is one the correct side?
Either side is fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is unlike a lot of like computer papers, one side's coded and the other one isn't. This is pretty much the same front or back. You might notice that when they make the paper, one side might be just slightly shinier or less textured, and that's just in the paper process. And you decide, do I want something a little more pressure or a little more texture or something smooth? So it's, kind of up to you. But either side should work. Now, this is called a bone folder because it's actually made of bone. And you could also use one of your Polychromos pencils, anything that's smooth. But what you want to do is when you get the corners really nice and tight and together, then just press down and put a nice crease in that paper. Okay. Then open it up and fold it in half in the other direction. And that is, Somerset comes in all sorts of weights. There are all sorts of really good drawing pencil, but we selected this paper because it's lightweight. So it doesn't become really bulky when you're using it. All right, so you have divided your paper into 4 rectangles. Now, what we're going to do is fold it to the center from both edges with the width rather than the length. I come across here and do the same thing here. And put that right up there. So when you unfold it, you're going to have 8 panels. Okay. And so each one of these is going to be a page. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of fold it in half again, dividing the length of the paper. And then I'm going to take my pair of scissors. These are my favorite scissors. They're huge. And then on the crease, all right, this is the folded edge towards me. And then this is the center line. And I'm going to cut from the folded edge all the way up to the next fold. All right, so you can use an X-Acto knife. You can use scissors. You could actually tear it. Sometimes to show how easy this book method is, I just tear it. But I have now cut one section. I've gone from the fold to the next fold line. And because I have it folded, it gets it on the other side as well. So when I open this up, I'm going to have like a slash in the center. But what I'm going to do is fold this, now pinch, and start pushing it towards the center. And you can see the way it makes an X. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of pull this one over and put the corner there. Now I'm going to break this and put the corner there. and bring this and put the corner there. And when I have it together like that, now place it down and take your pencil, your bone folder, and you're going to want to crease the closed edge over here. And all of it magically, now you have your book. Okay. So if you want to, you can put staples in here and it'll absolutely put it together. But I found with all the books that I've made, I rarely do that because it's just it's like origami. Once you get the folds correct and everything, it kind of holds itself together. Now, next thing I do after I've completed the structure itself, I could work on it this way, but a lot of times I find it's easier to work on it when it is flat. So what you might do, I'm going to do it a little more dramatically than I normally do. I usually do this very lightly so I can erase it, but I'm going to put an F for front, a B for back. Then I'm going to open it up, and so this will be, if that's the front, this will be page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and the back. So that if I unfold this now, I can work on it as a flat piece of paper, but I'll know what sequence I have to do it if I'm thinking about doing a book cover. So again, if I fold this back up, then I've got the front here.
Do you mind showing how you did that, the folding and cutting, just one more time, a little bit slower?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Here, we'll go back with what we've got here. We'll turn this into a book, right? Okay, so fold it in half, and the instructions should help you. Fold it in half this way. Fold it in half this way. Okay, so now you have 4 sections, right? Then fold it towards the center of the fold that you originally have for folding it in half lengthwise, and then flip it over and do the same with this one. Now I have 8 panels. Okay, so then fold it in half again. Along the edge that's folded at the middle, make a cut to the first fold. So when you have it like this, you cut it halfway. And then when you open it up and you get it back to the original folds, then let's pinch the ends and bring them forward so that the 2 pieces fit. And then what I do is do one at a time. I'll get it to where that fold is first, and then line that one up. The last thing to do then is to get that to flatten up and fold it over. And then you've got the book. You got the front, first page, the next page, and the bottom of it. It's so slick, and it just to me it's magic. And the real fun then is once you have that done, then you can start working on it. And I thought we might do, pick a subject if you want. I thought maybe we could do animals and hats. How is that? Okay, so we'll do a fish. Let me start with, let's draw it in first with, there are a couple of things I'd like to show you. Now, there's something that is called index color that Faber-Castell does, and they use the same pigment in everything that they make. All right, so this is a number 120 blue, Polychromos, and this is a 120 Albrecht Durer. This is oil-based, and this is water-based. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off kind of drawing my fish with my oil-based crayon. And I'm going to put him in a derby. We're going to make him a smoked fish and put a cigar in his mouth. Bad joke. Sorry about that.
Just real quick, Franz, do you know what kind of bone folder you're using?
Well, I think that they make a lot of them out of cuttlefish. It doesn't, it's just, I just bought it at a bookmaking supply place, and it was a bone folder, and it was the size I needed, and that's what I got. You can just as easily, I mean, it's fun using it, and I'm sure that there are certain instances where you want to get in with something that's thinner, but your Polychromos pencil has this really nice, it's a water-based, not a solvent-based paint on it. It's really smooth, and it works just as well. So, the main thing is its function rather than whether it's bone or whether it's from a wood pencil. Okay, so here's going to be our fish wearing a derby. And so I got the key lines there with an oil base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Albrecht Durer that has the same pigment in it, but it's of the liquid form. And then I can put in some of the darker blue. I'm going to think of this as being monochromatic just to kind of begin with.
I'm going to give you a friendly 30-minute
Oh, I got to hurry up. Holy smokes. Spent too much time gabbing about it. Okay. So now I'm going to take my brush and let's unfold this, because now the water will not leak into the other things. And I'll take my brush. So now when I get the Albrecht Durer hydrated, it has no effect on, I'm going to be very energetic about putting water here. You can see that those lines are not affected. So it's a nice resist program where you're using the oil base to be the stable element. And then as I put water on the Albrecht Durer marker, then I can get a nice blue tone that is exactly the same as the blue line that I drew it with. So there's a nice consistency visually with the quality of the blue without affecting the line work. Right, so then I can come back and I can decide, all right, where else? Now, I normally let that dry. You want to be a little careful when the paper is wet. If you go over it with a harder substance, then you might scar it up or do something to the paper. But since we are on deadline here, I'm going to kind of pretend that it is dry. So I can build up some value with the pencil in addition to the value and the tones I got with the Albrecht Durer watercolor. So I'm kind of using a little bit of the quality of both. And so let's say maybe I want to put the scales in. Some musical fish. Not only is it a smokefish, but it's musical because it's got scales. So I can keep on adding maybe a little bit of cross hatching, make his eyes a little bit darker with the oil based. And then if I want to shade those eyes a little bit to give them a little more dimension, then I can use the watercolor. And again, I'm not going to disturb the initial line that I put in there. Okay, so that's one use. Index color, if it's the same number of color in a pencil, it's going to be the same exact pigment in the marker, and you can use the two back and forth. So in this case, it's a resist with an oil-based line that is stable and a water-based marker. Okay, for the next one, we can actually use the Pitt pens. And I think this time, oh, too soon. Let's go with a hat like this, and we'll put it in the pig. Okay, so I'm going to use the FM, and I'm going to draw my main character lines with it. And I'm going to put him in a top hat, I think. No, let's give him a pork pie hat. Have more like the, well, he is a pig, so why wouldn't he have a pork pie hat? I like using this pen to give me different lines. It gives it more of an organic quality. A bow tie. If you're wearing a pork pie hat, you got to have a bow tie. So in this case, then, let's use, let me sharpen my pencil. Well, no, I can't find I've got too many things all over the place. So in this case, I'm using a combination of the Polychromos pencil and the black FM tip. Try to speed up a little bit because I'd like to get a good portion of this done. I don't know if we'll get the whole book done, but we'll get. Okay, so again, if I want to, I could use a marker. Now this time, this is the Pitt pen. It's going to be pretty intense, but it can also go on top of the Polychromos. So I get some little kind of. Now you could be doing something else. You could just do geometric shapes. Okay. Actually, let's just kind of pull everything out. Let's use the Albrecht Durer marker for nice red bow tie. I can use my little, and I can actually pick up some of this. I can get it wet, and then if I daub it, it'll make it a little bit lighter. Okay, we'll give him a little blue hat here. If I want to, I can come back in here, a little bit of shadow, do the same thing in through here. Now I can use a lighter blue. This is the Albrecht Durer pencil, so I can kind of bring that in here. It's lighter blue than what I just did. So if I want a little sheen, and let's make the hat band same color. Start off dark and then let it lighten up a little bit. A little darker there. Take the brush with a little water. And then I can make that, oops, clean your brush. That's all right. We'll get that to work. So I can blend that together a little bit more if I want. On another piece of paper, I could take this, pick that up, and then I could also use this for a little bit of shadow. So if I want something that's really very subtle, I can take that light blue Albrecht Durer pencil and come back in through here and put some shadow in. There you got that. Okay, so for the next one, let's try doing a chicken with yellow. Okay, so we're going to put him in a fez. I'm going to use the point instead of the brush. And I'll make the beak. Using the thicker point here. You can also, if you want to, you can sketch things out. I have a tendency just to draw stuff. I don't do a lot of like little preliminary drawing with graphite pencil and then go over it. I have a tendency to go directly into it. Not everybody does that. A lot of people will sketch things out first and then go over it with your different media. Okay, so that's Albrecht Dürer. And I want to get kind of a little change in intensity there to give a little bit of a highlight. I can come back with my Pitt pen. I'll get a little bit of a mix there. So I kind of like that red going to the yellow. Let's give it some. Okay, now I can take a yellow that is the same. This is one of the yellows you don't have, but I wanted to emphasize the index color function. So I grabbed one out of my set of 120. So again, this is the oil-based, so it's going to be impervious to anything I might add that is water-based. Now, if I want to make kind of a more of an orangey beak, I'll put some yellow down on that. And then I could take a little bit of red and very lightly, this is the Albrecht Dürer again. And I can decide to hydrate it, or maybe I'll just leave it as kind of that orange that I just got, and I'll make it a little bit darker kind of around the edge. And that I will get it to bleed a little bit. And I can carry some of that down here to these feet. Okay. Then I can also decide, all right, with my S, instead of the real heavier one, I could start putting in maybe a little bit of cross hatching. So again, these are all the kind of aesthetic and technical decisions you can decide to make for yourself. I mean, do you want to have strong black lines to help things out? Do you want to keep it very painterly? Do you want to do something abstract? You know, it's all up to you. The main thing to do, though, is try to discover what it is that would you find to be the most effective. Now, I'll continue, but just to show you how it's going along, then you kind of have the first page. We got those to do yet. We got those to do, and then you get a chicken, and then you get this guy. Now, the other thing that as I'm drawing, these are characters and things that I've been doing for like 40 years. So to me, I always try to make them different. I always try to find something different to do with them, and with the assortment of these materials that, again, are so premium that they encourage you to do all sorts of stuff with them. It makes it a lot of fun. But for those of you that are beginners and you start feeling a little intimidated about it, thinking, oh, you know, what you might do, I took a bunch of images, all right, and I just put them all together. But I put them together to conform with the style of the chapbook that we're doing. Next thing I did, and you know, I will have to admit that some of this takes a little bit of technology. I took that and then I turned it into grayscale. So now it's just grays. And then the next thing I did was I knocked down the transparency of it. So now I have a guide underneath it that once I start working with materials on top of it, will cover up what's already down there, but I've got a guide. So you don't have to trace things. You don't, you know, you could do it this way. And I've done it on a slightly larger paper here and figure that the easiest one to do is I've got kind of a pumpkin here. So if I come in through, it's almost like making your own coloring book. And until you're up to speed on your drawing skills, and, you know, in addition to doing this, you know, you should continue working on how you want to develop your own drawing style. But I found that sometimes when people have guides like this to copy, it helps them start to understand more about, you know, composition and about form, about what you have to do in order to get things the way that you want them. Now, I'm quite capable of doing things that are extremely realistic. I happen to just love doing the stuff that I do. It's a lot more fun for me. I think partially because I've never given up being 5 years old. So you can see that, you know, as I start to develop this, what's underneath it is disappearing. I'm just using that as a guide to get started, and I don't have to be like, you know, kind of a slave to what's on there. But, you know, it's just maybe something for those beginners that are a little intimidated by the whole thing. And I've got a bunch of friends that are photographers that will do photographs and then use these materials to hand tint them. So, I mean, they're using it very specifically within the realm of their photographic work, and they're not, you know, really interested in doing drawing. They just want like the effect of you know, from vintage photographs where, you know, they would hand tint the color on a black and white image. So I'll just work on this just for a second more, just to, you know, for those of you that, I just want everybody to be involved with exploring their creative ideas. And if you feel that at this point, you're not quite up to speed with your skills, work on those. But in the meantime, you still can be thinking about ideas and images that you want to put together. And this kind of technique might actually even give you some ideas of when it does come time for you to just be doing things wholly on your own without, you know, and you could, yeah, just find ways of incorporating. You can collage things, you can do hand drawing, but I thought I would throw that in very quickly, let you know that these materials are also really good for doing kind of tinting photographs. So that might be a way to get you started. All right, so let's go back to our book. How are we doing on time?
15 minutes. Yep, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so,
And don't forget about the 5-minute show and
oh,
tell.
that's right. We're going to have a 5-minute show and tell. All right. So let's go to, I don't know, let's go to another hat. Let's have a penguin that is off in the North Pole somewhere. Actually, I think, yeah, they're South Pole or North Pole? South
I think
Pole.
both.
I think most of them are in the South
South
Pole.
Pole.
I think polar bears are up north. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my favorite again. And again, I like that thick to thin. I kind of chose him for the top hat, either that or a snowman, because, well, you know, snowmen always are wearing top hats. Although anymore, I don't know where they would get the old top hats. That used to be when people started getting rid of them when they were on snowmen. But maybe you want something to slop over at the other side. That's okay, because what I want to do is show that he's actually holding the fish up. Maybe we could. This is kind of the way that I work in my sketchbook a lot. I'll just start drawing things, and you know, the idea occurred to me, let's do animals with hats. And then you just kind of have an enjoyable time kind of thinking about what that might be, and kind of a nice challenge too, because like, you know, if you've never drawn a penguin, then you got to kind of figure that out. Okay, this one is going to be primarily black and white. I've often felt too that, you know, sometimes very sketchy things can have a different effect than if you really are very deliberate and work on something. So I find that, especially if I get new materials, I like doing a little bit of both and just see what style seems to be the most suitable. Okay, this one I'm going to try to make really black and really solid. We'll shadow down here. Okay, so I'll work on the fish a little bit. I like kind of a nice yellow under body. Now, the other thing too is that I find, especially if I use a really heavy deposit of the black ink, it's permanent, but you have to let it dry first. It's like a traditional indie ink color formula. It dries and sets up and becomes permanent. But until then, it can be a little vulnerable with any of the pens or any of the water soluble stuff. So you can see the way that that yellow got a little dirty because I picked up some of the black. So under normal circumstances, I would wait until the black has set up a little bit before I would go over it with something that is water soluble. But again, because we're kind of have a slight time restraint. Okay, so I'm putting a really heavy deposit of the polychromos, and then I'm going to come down a little bit, and that'll kind of give it a nice, that kind of textured quality of fish. And then I use this kind of peachy color to blend in with the yellow a little bit, and then lighter application, so it starts mixing visually with that blue. A little bit like a speckled or rainbow trout or something. And that's the other thing that's fun about doing these kind of drawings. You can do anything you want. It doesn't, you don't have to be in the realm of what actually is. You can make stuff up using your imagination. Okay, so now this is the Polychromos, which is the oil-based. And I'm putting in the main bits for it. And then I've got an Albrecht Durer red that is exactly the same. So I can add that lightly here, and I'll go over it with a brush.
Right, this is your 2-minute warning before your show and tell.
I'm undergun now. Well, we got pretty far with this. Okay, real fast. Actually, instead of using that, this is the one that isn't water soluble. So it's not going to pick up the black as much. I also like to, whenever I have something that's solid black, I kind of like leaving a little bit of white and then giving it a little bit of a blue cast. Like that. Now I use the Albrecht Dürer lighter blue. Put a little bit of shading on his white front then. Just and actually that should be monocle. Hi there. Okay. Well, it's kind of rushed, and obviously I normally spend a lot more time, but you know, it's just fun to horse around like this. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if it's finished totally or not, but the book would be here. We got penguin started there. Who knows what we put there, there. And the pig in the back is wondering what just happened? What just happened? Now, very quickly, this is another thing that's kind of fun. This is a little chapbook I did about my two cats. I have two cats. One sleeps all the time. The other one just makes all sorts of noise, even in the middle of the night. So this is the one cat that likes to just sleep, and he might be dreaming of mice, and that's it for him. But what's fun about these chapbooks, if you don't put a staple and make it, if I unfold this, I magically come up with yet another book. Let's see. Oh, yep, there we go. So this is one about my cat Pipsqueak, who is very active. He likes chasing this stuffed rat from IKEA and makes a lot of noise. And sometimes it's like 2 in the morning and I hear all this yowling and he wants to bring Ratty into the bedroom and let me know that he's a great hunter. So you could do 2 books in one. You can do 1 book. Well, anyhow, you get the idea. You can do 1 book, and then if somebody's clever enough to notice there's something else going on, or you could just use this to write a letter. You could think about sending a book to a friend or something. You could have the book, and then if they unfold it, then you could write a secret message. You could do another book altogether. All right. Well, I know that was a lot to go through in a very fast time, but I hope that I imparted the enjoyment and the satisfaction of all this. It really is. It's like a 3-ring circus, and I like being in all 3 rings at the same time. So if anybody has any questions, if you know, there are no, just so you know, I'm not the art police that are going to drag you in because you've misused your materials or anything. The only thing I might do is like put you on probation if you're not having enough fun. So, okay, any questions or do you time to reveal?
Let's do the reveal. There's no one coming up with any right now, so let's do a show and tell. If anyone wants to share, if you have a favorite sketch you may have done today, go ahead
Even
and
if it's just a little section or something.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll be doing something and I'll think, oh, wow, look at that. And you could just really focus in on that if you like.
yeah. Turn those cameras on, share what you did. It's always cool for all of us to see each other's work and see how everybody else, how their thought process goes.
Oh, good. Boy, somebody actually got more done than I did. For you. Good.
Awesome. Yeah,
As
and
they say,
while we're
ask
doing this too,
you.
yeah. Add any questions in the chat too while we're show and telling. Oh, they're so fun.
Excellent.
See a lot
Wow.
of things.
Yeah. Well, that's I thought that was appropriate to a top hat. Excellent.
Very nice.
Love these.
Well, as you wouldn't suspect, I encourage you to really have fun with this stuff. I mean, even if you're doing something serious, it's still got to be fun. You know,
Yeah.
if there
Amy
isn't
is
an element
asking.
of fun in it, then something's wrong.
Amy is asking if these are similar to a zine. Do you
Yes,
make?
I mean that's something. I mean, you know, what's interesting, I have you know, I've illustrated children's books, and the one thing that was interesting to me, the first one I did, I mean, I'd never done it before, and I thought, oh God, I got a chance to do a kid's book, and it was before computers, and they just handed me a sheet of paper from a mimeograph machine that had the text of the book, and they said, okay, there you are, and I thought, oh, I got to plan the whole thing. I could decide who the characters were, what they looked like. And I also had to work on the pacing of the book. And it was written in kind of a rhyming stanza thing. So it made a little sense about how to break the book up. But I could decide, do you have one page for each bit of text? Or what I did is what they call spreads. When you have like you open the book, this is a spread. And you could either have individual pages or you could do a page that went over the whole thing. And so I did spreads, and figured out where the type is. But it was really interesting to have to work on the pacing. And even though they gave me the text, they didn't tell me what to do with it. And it was a challenge to try to figure out how do I put the text on each page to get you to want to turn the page to the next one. And what are the cues that you could give that it makes total sense to turn the page? So when you make these chapbooks, this is a great opportunity to play around with that kind of stuff. Like you build up a certain drama, perhaps, and then you've got some surprise at the end of it. Or maybe, as I mentioned, you go through and you pose a riddle, and somebody keeps on looking at the book and they can't figure it out, and then they realize the answer to their question is if they unfold the book and there it is. I mean, you can have so much fun with these things, but just as far as training in terms of book pacing and stuff like that, these are great because it gets you to think about what do you do to get the people to turn the page. So,
Yeah, it's great. A great way to learn storytelling and figure
yeah,
that
and you
process
know,
out
kids,
too.
I mean, you know, the structure is not that difficult. And, you know, I love seeing little chapbooks that kids put together because their drawings are precious anyhow, right? Even if they're like, you know, preschool or something and they're more scribbles, they enjoy making books on their own and they'll read them to you. You know, you
Yeah.
may not see what it's about, but they'll let you know. So this is a great project that the whole family, individual artists, I mean, there's so many opportunities to play with this book structure. And when you've got really great art supplies, I mean, that's a fun time.
Definitely. Well, this was really great. We don't have any more questions. I think you went through a lot of the materials and were able to walk everyone through all the capabilities that you can do with these materials today. It was really great. I had fun watching and seeing all your creativity come out on the page and your
Thank you all
hats.
so much. Yes.
Yes. Thank you all. We hope to see you on the next one. And happy to have you again, Franz. Hope to see you again
Oh,
soon.
it's always a pleasure. And everybody, it was great being able to demo for you. And I hope that you go away with lots of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're
Have a great
welcome.
day,
Bye-bye.
everyone.